I will never forget when I got my agent, Marietta Zacher. I had wanted her for so long. I had submitted Fenway and Hattie to her in the fall or late summer of 2012, and she read it and offered me a lot of feedback. And because she thought that would make it a much stronger story, give it a much better chance. And boy, was she right. And I said, oh, I can do that, and I spent 4 or 5 months working on it, and I sent it back to her. And unfortunately, I got an email late at night one night, and she said, ooh, this really isn't hitting the mark. And so, the next day, we exchanged emails again, and she left the door just this much open. So of course I was determined I was going to get it this time. And so I revised the story again. And this time I actually got some help. I had taken a class at Grub Street in Boston, and my teacher, Ben Winters, had since moved away, but I knew he did manuscript consulting. And so I asked him if he would work with me on the manuscript. And he said, well, of course, I remember that dog story and I'd love to help you. And he did. And so that spring and summer of 2013, I completely redid the manuscript. By the way, that was for the 4th time. And I resubmitted to Marietta at the end of July, beginning of August. And so, I mean, this is my 3rd time sending the same manuscript to the same agent. That's how badly I wanted to work with her. And then about 3 days later, I got an email from her asking if we could talk. And I was in New York with my husband for an anniversary trip. And he went to the restroom after lunch, and I checked my email and saw that. And I was so stunned because it had only been 3 days since I'd sent it to her, that I was in a daze. And we walked out of the restaurant, and I almost walked right into a cab. And he had to pull me out of the crosswalk because I almost got run over. That's how excited I was. And the next day we talked, and she said, how are you? And I said, I am freaking out. And she said, why? And I said, because you said you had some questions for me, and I can't think of what they might be. And that was how it started. And, she said she loved the manuscript and offered me representation. And I was so excited. When I hung up the phone, my husband was actually still asleep. I don't know why he was asleep. Maybe he wasn't feeling well. So I called Cheryl. Cheryl would have been my first or second person anyway. And I just remember being like on cloud 9 and how excited I was. And Marietta submitted Fenway and Hattie in September of 2013. And we went through several rounds of submissions, and I was very impatient, as I recall, because we did get a lot of rejections. And the number one rejection we heard was, we already have too many dog books. And so it was January, and I was starting to get really discouraged. I know we had a critique group the night before, and I said, Marietta and I are going to talk tomorrow about our strategy and what's going on, and I'm really nervous. And so the next day I talked to her, and we did talk about our strategy and stuff. And at that time, she let me know that Susan Cohan at Putnam was going to be making a decision really soon. And I tried not to get my hopes up, and she said, are you going to be around later? And I said, sure. I had no idea that it was that close, but Marietta didn't want to get my hopes up. So that afternoon, the phone rang again, and it was Marietta, and I thought she just had some follow-up questions, which is what she had indicated. And she said, no, we got an offer from Susan. And I couldn't believe it. I was so excited. Of course, I was just in shock. I called Cheryl. It was the most exciting day that I could possibly remember. And that was the beginning.